Well, welcome everyone. For the sake of time, considering that this is a mini webinar, I want to get started. So we have about 235 of you in the room. Want to say welcome to our virtual speaker series for 2025. This is again a mini webinar. Christina will be presenting for about 30 minutes, and then we will have about a 15-minute Q&A. Today's webinar is titled Talking So Your Teen or Young Adult Will Listen, a new approach to giving advice, provided by the PA Care Partnership, which is a statewide system of care grant in association with the Office of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services, better known as OMSAS. And I will toss it over to Colleen to introduce Christina.
Thanks, Jamal. Welcome, everyone. We're happy to have you here. Actually, Christina is a frequent flyer. She has been part of our webinar series before, and she was just a recent speaker. And the reason we called her back is because we are getting ready, probably many of you already have either college students home or your school districts are closing for the summer and your children will be home. So we thought, what a great bite-sized topic to talk about in a shorter presentation style than what we normally do. So I'm excited to have Christina present. She is a mother of 3 young adults, so she's been there, done that. So I'm going to just turn it right over to her to talk about some advice for us. So Christina, take it away.
Well, thanks for inviting me, Jamal and Colleen. We're going to talk about a different way of giving advice to your teen or young adult, so maybe they're a little bit more willing to listen. And just so that I can make sure that I have a good internet connection, I'm going to turn off my camera. Um, And let me just tell you a little bit about the Pennsylvania Parent and Family Alliance. We serve parents and primary caregivers such as grandparents, foster parents, etc., birth parents who are raising children who have a hard time with their behavior and mental health. Now, that can include a formal diagnosis of something like ADHD or bipolar disorder, but we know that it can take a long time to figure things out. So, no formal diagnosis is needed. And we also understand that parenting doesn't stop once your child turns 18. So we're here to help parents with of adult children as well when they're having a tough time. Today's webinar is part of our Creating a Healing Environment Parent Toolkit series, specifically created to give parents of children around age 14 through adulthood some tools needed to help guide our children who are having a hard time with challenging behaviors, emotions, or their mental health. So, today we're going to talk about why it's important for you to offer information or ideas in a way that your teen or young adult can hear and consider it. We're going to talk a little bit about what the information and lecture trap is, and we're going to describe and practice using an information sandwich. Now, as our children get older, our job shifts from directly telling them what to do and how to do it towards helping them learn how to figure things out gradually on their own. If we don't provide them with opportunities to make choices, evaluate how that worked out, and when necessary, get back on track after a poor choice when they're young and their experiments are less dire, they'll be forced to learn when the stakes are much higher. As they grow, our job shifts from director to coach, and that really does require a different skill set. Now, it may help to keep in mind that our children are growing up in an information and digital age where they can access lots of information and resources. For many of us, when we were their age, we were dependent on the adults around us for feedback on plans and ideas. It was easy to gatekeep things they didn't want us to know or know yet. Now the world's at our children's fingertips, and it's easy to find complete strangers who may be giving them incorrect or incomplete information and have no personal stake in the outcome of decisions made based on their advice. Being young often means everyone knows better than their parents, and it's a very typical developmental stage. So don't take it too personally if your child suddenly thinks you don't know anything about anything at all. Also, as our children get older and need to make their own choices, they're the ones who have to deal with the consequences. If they skip an appointment with their therapist, they may not be able to get another for months. If they decide not to go to work, they're going to be the one who has less money when it's time to get paid. We can't live their lives for them, so we need to do our best to prepare them for what's ahead. Yeah. It can be really hard for parents who were raised in a more authoritarian home or who have played a very directive role so far in their child's life to adjust their parenting style. When our kiddos are younger, our role is more focused on simply telling them what to do or not do. Things like look both ways before crossing the street or hold my hand in this crowd are things that we would typically very directively say to our child. As they get older, we need to step away gradually so they can practice and master decision making skills while it's still safe to fail, and we can be there to catch them and reteach. We just can't continue to simply tell our children what to do in every instance and expect them to do it automatically. That kind of conversation is called a lecture and information trap. We basically talk at them until we wear them down. And often we rarely stop to ask them what they're thinking or truly listen. Okay, here is the parent ideal. Close your eyes and picture it. You find a vape pen in your 15-year-old's room. So you spend some time gathering research and facts and sit them down to present them with a very well reasoned argument discussing the adverse effects of vaping and 10 reasons why they should quit. After your presentation, you sit back in your chair and you look at your teen and you see that their eyes are welling up with tears and they say to you, "You're absolutely right. What was I thinking? Thank you for veering me off the wrong path." Like that doesn't happen, does it? It's really hard to watch your children make poor decisions. And of course, you should talk to them, but hitting them with a ton of information or talking at them instead of with them, it really isn't the best way to go about things. As parents, we know the stakes are high, and as our children get older, we also know that they have no idea of the grave and life-altering consequences they can face based on a simple, uninformed, or good idea at the time decision that they make. Situations like how to interact with law enforcement, underage drinking, and not understanding credit cards are just a few decisions that can take years to fix. The amount of information that our children need to learn when they're young is overwhelming when you think about it. That's why it's really important to be able to communicate effectively. Now, obviously, you really care about getting through to your child because you're here. So let's talk about a different way to talk to your child. It's called an information sandwich. And just like you build a sandwich layer by layer, you'll build your conversation bit by bit. I'll break it down for you step by step. First, you're going to ask for permission. Then you're going to give information. And finally, you'll check back and clarify what they've received. Using this technique might seem a little strange at first if you're used to launching in with the solution, which I totally did myself. But this is a different kind of conversation. Now, don't expect your child to go all in the first time you do it. They may look at you a little weird. They may think it's a trap, like, why are you asking me this? What do you know? They may not even be sure how to have this kind of conversation with you. And that's okay because you're going to start with small things and you're going to work your way up and get through it together. But before we move on, the most important takeaway from this is that we never win on the strength of our argument. We win on the strength of our relationship. And that's the big benefit of using the information sandwich technique. Over time, using this technique can preserve and strengthen your relationship as your child moves into adulthood because you're listening to them. You'll be acting like a trusted guide, and through practice and patience, this will definitely improve their confidence and their ability to make decisions. Okay, so when are you going to use this? When you have to give feedback your child may not want to hear, This technique is also really great to use for having difficult conversations with teens and young adults when you have little input or ability to change their behavior. And last but not least, this technique is a really good learning tool for you to use as your child begins to get older and you want to give them information that can help them make decisions. It takes the onus off you from directing them on what to do and instead allows you to provide guidance in helping them make and learn from their own decisions. So let's go to step one. You're going to ask their permission to talk. Think about how we talk with another adult or colleague. You don't just barge into their office and tell them stuff. You generally knock on their door and say, "Hey, do you have a minute?" Now, this is the same thing. You're getting their buy in and setting the stage for a conversation. It's not meant to suggest that you have no authority, but you're trying to reduce your child's defensiveness and feel better about themselves and their communications with you. And just like any time you ask anyone for permission, you have to be prepared for them to say no and then be willing to honor their answer. By asking their permission, your child will develop a sense of safety and control. It gives them a choice and honors their independence. And it gives you the ability to have your conversation in a calm manner when you're both able to be present. And once our children are over 18, they don't have to listen. So we really need to honor that fact that they have a choice and set the stage differently. So examples of how to ask for permission. You're you can say something like, "I had a thought. Can I share it now? I have an idea. Would you like to hear it? I have a concern about your plans. Is this a good time to share it? Or would it help if I shared something that I learned about that?" Okay, so let's see what this looks like in practice. So, step one is ask for permission. As a parent, you say, "You mentioned you'd like to get a job this fall. Have you thought about how it will work around your marching band practices?" And your child says, "Nope." And so you say, "I have a few thoughts. Is this an okay time to talk?" And hopefully your child says, "Fine." Now, once you get their consent to talk, you're going to move on to step two, which is providing information. You'll start by framing the issue as you see it and provide your thoughts and concerns. Let them know what you've been thinking about, why you're concerned, and what you'd like them to consider. This is your opportunity to make sure that you understand the issue at hand. So start by paraphrasing what you think the issue is. So maybe you would say, "I know you were talking about applying for a job at Walmart this fall. Aunt Betty works there and was telling me their HR person only hires students who can work between 3 and 9 every night and all day on the weekends. With requirements like that, I was thinking maybe a job babysitting or tutoring would be better with your fall schedule. You can also apply in the spring since your schedule opens up more." So let's look at step two using a trickier issue. Let's say your child is turning 18 and plans to move out and get their own place. You have their permission to start the conversation. You listened with an open mind, and now you're going to provide some information. So maybe you say, "I know you have money set aside from your summer job and you're planning on living with Alex. Sounds like you really thought through, and this is great. But I'm worried because you said the lease is only going to be in your name. Do you know that means Alex can move out of the apartment whenever they want? And because you've signed the lease, you're going to be responsible for their half of the rent as well until your lease is up?" Now, let's say your child says something like, "Oh, Alex wouldn't do that to me." One of the reasons why it's important to prepare for your discussion is so you have your talking points ready. You want to be able to stay focused and not get off topic. In this case, you're worried about the lease and your child's responsibility for paying the rent. This isn't a discussion about liking or disliking Alex. Being prepared can help you stay focused. So maybe you would say something like, "Look, I admit Alex isn't my favorite person, but this isn't about them. Sometimes the lease is written in a way that dictates how many overnight visitors you're allowed to have and limits that number each month. If Alex isn't on the lease, they'd be considered a guest, and the landlord could say they can't stay there every night. Having a roommate sign the lease protects them as well. Could you agree to ask the landlord for a copy of the lease and we can read it together before you sign it? Now, it's pretty typical that many of the more important conversations you're going to have will take more than one discussion. By providing your information and asking them to consider what you've said, you can keep an open dialogue. Also, in case things don't go well with that particular decision, you want your child to know that they can come to you and be like, hey, this happened. What can I do? The goal is really to preserve your relationship with your child. So you want to remember to check back and clarify with phrases like, how do you feel about that idea? Is that something you'd be willing to consider? Would you think about it for a bit and we could talk again before you make your decision? Or how do you think that would fit into your plans? You're asking to genuinely get their feedback. So be prepared to listen. And of course, it has to be okay for them to say, nope, I've made up my mind. So here's some tips for success when you're going to have conversations like this. Just like when you were learning how to drive, you didn't get your learner's permit and take off on a solo weekend trip. This is the same thing. It's best to start small with low stakes situations. They have to be legitimate issues because your child is going to know if you're patronizing them. But things that are simple, like spending all their birthday money on something impractical or doing something really wild with their hair, like shaving it all off or dyeing it neon green. Something important to them that doesn't have long term consequences or critical impact. Now, if you're 100% dead set against whatever it is that your child wants to do, then this is not the right technique to use. You have to be okay with their decision to take or not take your advice. This technique is just a tool for your toolbox. Sometimes you need a hammer and sometimes you need a screwdriver. This technique won't work well with all of your challenges. Use it at the right time. Now, at first, they may be confused or suspicious what you're asking them about. If it's the first time talking to your child, asking your child, are you free to talk? They may not be sure how to feel or what to think, especially for having a difficult relationship at the moment. Be prepared for them to say no when you ask for permission. That's why it's a good idea to start small. I was thinking about you saying you wanted to dye your hair purple. Do you have a minute to talk about that? Now, if they say no, you reply, okay, but it's something I'd like to talk about. So would you rather talk after dinner or after your shower tonight? Just because they say no doesn't mean you won't talk about it ever. So phrase your question accordingly. And as anyone in a relationship with another human being knows, can we talk is always a loaded question. I learned to wait until I was in person with time and space to have a conversation with my kiddo that started with, can we talk? Now, once they got used to having conversations like that, there's a trust that it's not like a sneaky way you're going to tell them what to do. And like maybe you can send a text that says, hey, when you get home tonight, let's talk about your plans for the weekend. But until you build up that trust, avoid sending texts like, can we talk when you get home? They may worry themselves into a state that makes a simple conversation impossible to have. And staging is everything. Pick your time and place appropriately. It's likely that this situation has been on your mind for a while, but your child doesn't know that. Avoid times when either of you is in a hurry, like before school or on your way out the door. Make sure you have time to listen. It's not fair to say your piece and then peace out, even if you plan to offer them time to think about what you say. Don't bring up sensitive topics in front of others like siblings or friends. Again, you want them to feel free to talk and share and for you to listen. Think about your timing. You can set the stage by popping your head into their room and saying, hey, I wanted to talk to you for like 10, 15 minutes. When would be a good time for you to pause your game or take a break if they're in the middle of something? You're not demanding they stop right now. It's giving them a chance to wrap up what they're doing. You can probably wait 30 minutes, but you're not going to wait all night. Games and doom scrolling can go on forever. If they can't give you a time, then just say, okay, I'll check back in about 15 minutes. A couple things to keep in mind. It's okay if they make mistakes as they're learning this process. No one gets it right all the time, and you'll always love them and be there for them. We know that. You won't be able to anticipate every possible answer, so don't try. Just focus on listening. And it's okay if they've given you information and feedback, and you need to say to them, you've given me a lot to think about, and you'd like a day or two or a little bit of time to think about things from their point of view and then talk again. Just don't forget to schedule a time to follow up with that conversation. Another really important part of this type of discussion is how you listen. I can't emphasize enough the importance of listening, really listening. Remember when you were a kiddo and you were full of ideas and passion? That's where your child is at now. Things won't be important later in life, like going to this one party, is absolutely critical to your child. And things are so very important, like staying on their medicine, may just be an inconvenience to your child. In our world today, if you want your child to listen to you, you too have to be willing to listen and really hear them. Parenting is way harder than it used to be. Okay, because you're setting the stage for a conversation and not having this discussion off the cuff, you'll have time to think about how to frame this discussion. When you're dealing with a live human being, again, there's no way to know exactly how they'll respond. Maybe when you ask, you'll find out that they really didn't plan to dye their hair purple. It was just a random thought they said out loud, or it was a thought at the time and they've moved on. Maybe they've thought it through, and even though you don't agree with their plan or their logic behind their choice, you decide to let it be a learning experience. Whether they succeed or fail, they're learning something about making decisions. And again, at first, if it's a simple decision with no lifelong consequences, then they learn something about themselves. Maybe it's confidence in their decisions. Maybe they learn that you're able to listen to them and accept their decisions. Remember, you're playing the long game. And your child may not be receptive of your suggestions or agree with you right away or at all. But our goal is to have the opportunity to present your concerns, which maybe they haven't thought about or they don't have that information to know. You offered your help and support, which helps and protects. It may even enhance your long-term relationship with your child. Okay, so recapping the steps involved in an information sandwich. One, you're going to ask for permission. Two, you're going to give information, and then you're going to check back and clarify. So here's an example of an information sandwich all put together. You said you wanted to dye your hair orange. Can we talk about that? I'm worried that if you do, you won't get that part in the school play, and I know how important this is to you. How do you feel about waiting until summer? Okay, so you're not worried. All right, well, thanks for listening. In this scenario, natural consequences will take over. It's a safe but potential uncomfortable learning opportunity for them. Here's another example. I was thinking about the suggestion your therapist made about attending a support group. You mentioned you didn't want to because you were worried about being judged. Would you like to hear my idea? How about trying an online support group and seeing how that goes? Now, you may want to add in more information, and this is your time. You're going to listen and you're going to respond appropriately. Here's another example that's a little more dramatic. Now, hopefully, you'll have time to build up to more critical situations like this. But if not, you can still use this technique and have this conversation. For context, your child wants to drop out of school and get their GED. I know you're thinking about getting your GED instead of graduating with your class. Is now a good time to talk about that? We're going to assume a perfect world and they say yes. And so you share your thoughts and you wrap up. Would you be willing to take a practice test first and see how you score? They agree. So you can kind of pull things together and say, I know this year's been really difficult. Let's see how you feel when your scores come back. And then, if you'd like, I'm willing to help however you decide to proceed. In situations like this, you may be dying inside. But once your child gets to a certain age where your options are seriously limited, your goal shifts and you want to do what you can to preserve your relationship with your child and step into that coaching or trusted guide role. At this point, your focus is to find a happy medium everyone can live with and keep the conversations going. Some other situations like this could be if your child decides they want to go off their medication, stop seeing their therapist, take a gap year out of high school. So remember to start small. It's okay to not resolve this issue with one conversation. Be patient with yourself as you practice this new technique. There may be times when you kind of slip back into that information and lecture mode. And remember to leave your ego at the door. Be okay with them not accepting your suggestions, especially if it's going to protect your long term relationship. Okay, so for homework, look for something small to practice this new tool with this week. Here's a simple planning guide. Pick one bit of information or feedback you'd like to give to your child and kind of think like, what do you imagine their reaction could be? How will you ask for permission? How will you offer information or feedback? And how will you check back and clarify? At the Parent Alliance, we're here if you need us. Our family support partners can help brainstorm and role play with you as you're preparing to have a conversation. They're available to debrief after your conversations to help you decide how to proceed. And there's never a fee to work with us. We follow your lead. Um, we're available to anyone here in Pennsylvania. And remember, we're all parent peers, so we do this stuff all the time with our own kiddos, and we're happy to help. There's some contact information for us. Our website is paparentandfamilyalliance.org, and our email is right there. Oh, look at how I did pretty well on time. I have 1 minute left.
You did. A master of time there, Christina. Thank you for that presentation. I am getting some chat that the download for the cheat sheet. Oh, never mind. It was,
Yeah, things sometimes go to spam. That's
yeah.
the joy of anything emailed to you in this day and
Yeah, so for those of you who saying that you aren't receiving it, if you could check your spam box and then report back, that would be helpful.
You
Thank you.
can you can also email us at contact@paparentfamilyalliance.org and we can get it sent to you.
Yes. Um, thank you, Mary. Christina, if you can say that email address again.
It should be on the screen if I'm still sharing, but it's
Oh, okay.
contact
Gotcha.
at paparentandfamilyalliance.org.
Gotcha. Thank you. So that email that's right there on the slide, if you send an email to that, they will get a copy of that cheat sheet out to you, and we will be sending a copy. Well, we'll send the link, and hopefully people will be able to access it in the resources when we email you all the presentation link and all of those things. So. There was a really good question that came in. It was an anonymous person. Um, and it really resonated with me because they say, what would you say to the person that says these ideas are absolutely foreign to me? I was raised in a yes, ma'am, no, ma'am kind of family, and there was not too many options or choices given.
Yeah.
Directives were given.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the case. And that's why for some people, you may be listening and being like, duh, of course, you know.
Mhm.
Of course, I would talk to my kiddo like this. But for some of us who were raised in a more authoritarian or dictatorial kind of family, agreed, it's completely different. But think about these things as like, so I see somebody asked about like, how would you adapt this to working with middle schoolers? Just kind of think about it like the same way maybe you're pitching an idea at work. The same way maybe you're talking to your best friend, giving them some ideas. You for certain times that you're going to use this technique, you don't have any say so. There comes a time in many parent-child relationships where like you're yelling at your child and they are taller than you, or maybe you say, be home at 9 o'clock or else. And they just realize that if they're not home at 9 o'clock, there's nothing you can do about it. That forces this shift in having those kind of conversations because you just don't have a choice in what your child does unless you're going to drive the streets and look for them. And how are you going to drag them back into the car when they're, taller than you? This is really a different mind shift. And so this is why it's really a good idea. Again, you can practice this with a friend. You could think about how you talk with friends, how you talk with colleagues, and then kind of think about how would I do this with my child? You can practice. I always suggest practicing on super safe things. So, an example for middle schoolers. Your child wants to we're in Pennsylvania. Your child wants to wear shorts. It's March. Your child doesn't want to take a coat. Your child doesn't want to take mittens or gloves to school. You can say to them, I checked the weather. Do you have a minute? I want a quick conversation before you're walking out the door. I checked the weather. It's going to be 22 degrees out today. Do you think you're going to get cold? You are on the bus for an hour. Do you think you're going to get cold? Maybe you should take a coat or mittens or wear pants. Um, and if your child said, "No, I'm good. I got it." Let them go. It's terrifying, yes, because as a parent, we're always thinking about the worst case scenario, and our child now has frostbite and we have CYS at our house. Um, but I have had these arguments with my daughter. I remember one day forcing her, "You're not walking out of this house until you put a coat on." She put the coat on, she walked out the door, and I saw her toss her coat into the bushes before she got into her friend's car. That was fun. And like, what are you going to do about it? So this might be a scary way of handling the situation, but at some point your children are just going to make their own decisions. Um, so I think that could be a typical Pennsylvania middle schooler kind of conversation the night before. Hey, look at how cold it's going to be tomorrow. You don't even have to wear your coat. Why don't to make me happy? Could you agree to put long pants in your backpack? Could you agree to put mittens and a hat in your backpack? So have that conversation with them. In a lot of cases, like Sue just said, natural consequences take over. And maybe over time, your children are going to learn to listen to you, that they're never, I won't say never. They may be unlikely to ever admit to you that you were right, but they may walk in the door in the evening, after school with their mittens on or with long pants on. And truly, if you're really, 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 really worried in a case like the jeans or pants, maybe you run to the school and drop them off at the office for them. I don't know.
Great points. Great points. Thank you. Anne wanted to know, how would you use this if if you caught your child vaping?
I think if I caught my child vaping, I would do the exact same thing. Hey, what's going on with the vape? Um, First question. Um, is your child vaping a deal breaker for you? Because if vaping is a deal breaker for you, this is not the technique to use.
Mhm.
If vaping is a deal breaker, then you set boundaries. I'm not I'm not giving you any money for vaping to buy vapes. You're not allowed to vape in the house, whatever your boundaries might be. If you just want to have that conversation with you where you talk to them about it, then it's the same thing. Hey, I'd like to talk to you tonight. Dad and I would like to talk to you tonight about vaping. Well, are you free to have, do you want to have the conversation before or after dinner? And then again, you're going to kind of sit down, you're going to frame that with, I smoked all through college. I had a really hard time stopping. I spent a lot of money on it. And now I have to go for regular lung scans to make sure I'm okay. I'm just really worried about your long-term health and, how this might affect you. And then be willing to listen and see where it goes. This is going to be another one of those things that maybe long term discussions, and it may be something where you use a variety of techniques. Maybe if you know that they're um, taking, they're asking for money to buy replacement cartridges and new vape pens, maybe you want to limit that money that you give them, but you can kind of bundle these techniques together.
Thank you. Aaron wanted to know, for our children who default to feeling uncomfortable talking about things they're struggling with, seemingly independently of the parent relationship, how can we help improve that situation?
Reframe that for me again so I understand.
So, uh, the question is about children who default to feeling uncomfortable talking about things that they struggle with. And it doesn't seem to matter if they have a good relationship with the parent or not. There are just things that certain kids just feel uncomfortable talking with, like the birds and the bees, or, really uncomfortable conversations that you ultimately end up having with your kids at some point, right?
Yeah.
How can we help improve that situation, maybe using these techniques?
So I think doing your best to have low stakes conversations. Some of the things that I know I've suggested in the past are going into your child's room, going into their space, and joining them in whatever they're doing. A lot of times we'll say to our kiddos, "Hey, why don't you come out with me and we'll bake cookies together, or come out and talk to me while I'm making dinner, or come out and do a family thing together." Go into their room if they're playing video games, sit on the bed, ask them what they're doing, have brief conversations where you leave sooner rather than later. Make sure, like, maybe go in and have a 5-minute conversation with something engaging them that they like to do. So, video games. Oh, what's this new video game? How are you doing on it? What level did you get to? Wow, that's great. I'm glad you're doing so well. All right, I'll talk to you later. Um, so push in for them, having a lot of shoulder to shoulder conversations. We always tell people to have conversations with their kiddos when you're driving them somewhere. They're kind of a captive audience. So that's really good. And not just to have the difficult conversations, but to have the fun conversations about things that you know that they care about. There's a great commercial that I've seen using music to talk to your child. Find out what kind of music your child listens to, and even if it makes your ears bleed, it's not your favorite music, whatever. The same way you do when you're kind of meeting a partner and you get involved in their activities that they like, you at least learn about them. Do that same thing with your child. I think that children with ADHD are really, really, really difficult to talk to because they will say yes and agree with you to make any conversation stop. So
Mhm.
this is why it's good to kind of try and engage them in the conversation. How do you feel about that? What were you thinking? Can we talk about this again? Can we talk about this later? Making the conversation shorter rather than longer, having them multiple times.
All right, thank you. We have a couple of questions that popped up in the chat, and we want to ask those real quick. For the sake of time, I want to make sure that we end at 12:45. Maria says, my son has ADHD and he is very closed up. He doesn't like to have conversation. How would I get him to have that trust and to be open with me?
So I think that that's really about that relationship building over time. You can find an authentic decision that they've made, and you can comment on it. Hey, I love the way you did X, Y, or Z. Our children with ADHD, we have a stat about how many negative messages they get over time. And I think as parents, I know like myself, sometimes I feel like all the time I would be saying to my kiddos, do this, don't do that. And, just having more of those feedback kind of conversations. But do your best to have those conversations that build trust over time by commenting, catch them being good and having those conversations with them where you talk to them about something that they did well, a reason why you're proud of them, a decision that you really like that they make. And so it's something that happens over the course of time. Letting them know as they're younger that they are allowed to make decisions, make their own decisions, and you're gonna back them up no matter whether they make a good decision or not. You're not going to say, gotcha. If you would have done it the way I told you to do, or, well, you shouldn't have done that. You're just going to have that debriefing conversation with them afterwards about, yeah, that didn't work out really well, or it didn't work out the way you had hoped it would. And boy, that's kind of tough. Do you have any ideas for how to change it, how to do it differently next time? I think that our kiddos need to build up that trust in us that it's okay and we're not going to say, "Oh, you made that decision, you screwed up, so now from now on you're not allowed to."
Mm, sure. Thank you.
And I'm giving you like a lot of really generic
Hmm.
answers. Again, this is why it's really great to have someone to talk to one-on-one, whether that's like maybe your own therapist, a therapist who works with your child, parent peer support, a good friend, whoever, can kind of help you brainstorm really specific information, knowing more about your child.
Thank you. And our last question comes from Alexa Price. What do you do about the 14-year-old child that refuses to go to school or they leave the house without asking and refuse to come back home?
So those are two different issues. If you have a child who refuses to go to school, you can go to the school and you could request that they do a functional behavioral assessment. Many schools will say we can't do one until the child comes to school, but that's not true. Um, the school can do a functional behavioral assessment, and that can help you get to the decision and figure out, is there something going on at school that your child is avoiding. We know that children who are bullied don't want to go to school. Schools that are safe, children don't want to go to school. The instance of a child even seeing someone else being bullied um, makes them not want to go to school. So there's an awful lot of options, or an awful lot of reasons why maybe they aren't going. It could be anxiety, it could be depression. Maybe they feel like they don't have any friends. Whatever the case is, I would always start, if you can't get your child to go to school, go to the school and ask them to do a functional behavioral assessment. They don't have to have a diagnosis. They don't have to have an IEP in order for you to ask, for one. I would always start there. I'd go to my child's doctor, have them do like a once over with them to make sure that they are physically and mentally healthy and there's not some reason why they're not going to school. And then, you can ask your child. They may not trust you to answer openly right at first. But schools are also, if you have truancy issues with your child, schools are required to do a student attendance improvement plan. I know this all assumes that schools do what they're supposed to do. But that can also be something else where maybe someone in the school talks to the child about why they're not willing to come to school. I will tell you sometimes, really quick, I know we're over time. One of the things that I like to do is if there's someone else in the child's life who they're close with, a favorite aunt, a godparent, an older sibling, a cousin, whoever, who can kind of talk to them. Sometimes it's a great way to have that conversation and get the inside scoop to what's going on that your child won't tell you.
Sure. So we want to say thank you again, Christina, for another wonderful presentation. A lot of great information was shared. We appreciate the Q&A session. As always, we also want to let everyone know that we have a couple of webinars coming up, full-length webinars coming up within the next couple of weeks. June is Internet Safety Month, and with that said, we will be hosting Richard Cervello next week on understanding the dangers of the online world and how to stay safe. So we will be having that one on June 11th at 12 o'clock until 1:30. And then our next webinar after that will be on June 18th at noon. And that will be on stalking and recognizing the difference between love and obsession. And we look forward to seeing you all there. Thank you again to Christina. Thank you again to Colleen. And thank you all for attending. Would like to say enjoy the rest of your week, and we hope to see you next week. Have a good one, everyone.